If you could introduce yourself briefly and
make your point.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to be able to speak to you in a few words. And first of all, I would like to excuse myself because I could not find the Hague. I was late.
A lot of people can't find the Hague.
So I excuse myself. Secondly, people have been discussing a lot about the genocide. In one word, there is Resolution 955 of November 8th, 1994. What does it call the genocide? The Rwandan genocide. That's it. That is Resolution 955 of November 8th. I repeat. So I think that we should not keep on discussing, calling it, shall we put it this X or Z or what? It is more than clear. When it comes to the Cacaca Courts, because now I'm finishing with this one, and going to the Cacaca Courts in Cacaca itself, since 1994. I'm sorry, gentlemen, in 1994, I was myself in Rwanda. 1995, I was in Rwanda. I only left Rwanda in 1996. For sure, in 1994, many judges had been killed, but a few of them were still existing in the country. And I remember with the Dutch taxpayer, you people who are gathered here, with your taxpayers' money, many judges were trained since 1994 in order to try and convict hundreds of thousands of Rwandans who were already in prisons. I was there. Since all of those people who were trained, about 1,500 people who were trained, none of them went to any court to think and talk about the genocide between 1994 and 2000. None spoke about the genocide. It was in 1999, as you say it very well, that the government, which had forgotten about 150,000 people, Hutus, who were rotting in the prisons, that is when you started to think about how shall we put it? How are we going to call it? That time, the Rwandan government had trained enough young guys who would work as witnesses in many different courts. This is the truth. By 2000, that is when the Rwandan government took now a few individuals who had never learned anything just from the hills and mountains, who had no notion in law, who did not know, who even never knew how to read or write. And again, those who stood on the government's side to try only Hutus because the urgency was there, as the president said, President Kagame himself. A genocide had taken place. But having committed a genocide, a war crimes, or a crime against humanity, the three of them, even the genocide, the three of them are killing people. The United Nations, in their Resolution 955, if I refer to it again, defined the Rwandan genocide, gave a boundary. The Rwandan genocide started on, according to that resolution, on January 1st until December 31st, 1994. It is within a framework of 12 months. But to the Rwandan government, the genocide started in 1990 and ended in 1994. Now a big, huge question mark. Where are the army guys, the RPF soldiers, who killed the people all the way from Byumba when they attacked from Uganda, crossed the country, and all the people, the reason why all the people who were displaced, who were fleeing the zones, all the people were fleeing the zones being occupied by the RPF guys, the Tutsi rebels, if we put it that way. So they were fleeing because they were being killed. Was a good example. In 1993, around early 1994, we had approximately 1 million people surrounding the capital city of Kigali, coming to bathe in town, going to sleep in the open air, no shelter, no food, no clean water, dying of epidemics, all of those diseases, and because they were fleeing, they were being killed by the army, the RPF army. Now, can you give us a list of about 100 soldiers who killed people before April 6, 1994, during those areas your army was controlling? Is there any? I have never heard of any person who has been tried, who has been convicted, and yet we know thousands of people who have been killed. What is the solution then? Gacaca would have been a good solution if the Gacaca wouldn't have been a government orchestrated instrument. But unfortunately, it was a government instrumented stuff. This much you know it as I do. Gacaca is a court where Tutsis try and convict Hutus. This is a fact. Therefore, reconciliation will never be possible unless, if this Gacaca is supposed to be Gacaca, and bring all Rwandans around the table as we are here, in a face-to-face, look at each other, bring the whole truth, and through words, we have been lying throughout history. Saying because of a kind of propaganda, because it is me who's supposed to be on power today, I have to fight for it by all means. I have killed my neighbor, I have to hide it by all means, and this and that. If we want to find a lasting solution for Rwandans, what we need from the international community would rather be to bring us around a table, ask us to bring the whole truth to this table, and through dialogue, we solve our conflict. Because when it comes to Gacaca, I'm sorry, has never been a solution, but rather a problem. This is my way of seeing things. Gacaca has been a problem for the last more than 10 years. And has created a huge gap between Hutus and Tutsis. Those people who live in Rwanda or who are pro-X or Z will tell me that, no, you are lying. Because they know that in Rwanda, you don't tell what you think is right. Only because of that. But otherwise, Gacaca has been more of a problem than a solution.
Is anybody want to elaborate on this, because it's a heavy accusation? You say there's a conspiracy of the Rwandan government trying to manipulate Gacaca, trying to manipulate justice. Is anyone? First you and then you. Okay.
Thank you. I just want. My name is Eric. I'm from here, The Hague. I just wanted to see the statement made by Paul Rusabagina. What does he say about the international recognition that Gacaca has earned? Because the Gacaca system of transitional justice is now a model for almost the entire after conflict world. We read about delegations after delegations going to Rwanda to learn about the Gacaca as a good practice in after conflict management.
Okay.
For me, I came here hoping that I would be into the discussions that are around the issue. But there are things that I cannot really comment about. Like, for example, to say that the government trained people to be witnesses, like for God's sake, we have to have at least some minimum civility in whatever we're saying, and this is no offense to anybody, but that is a blatant, I would say, lie I have ever seen since I was born. And some of, I don't want to give you as a witness, but at least we have across different criticisms about Gacaca. We disagree on many things, but I would want to ask ties of, I'm sorry to bring in this, but at least if you have ever came across at somewhere that says that Rwanda trained people to be witnesses in different, there are things on which we cannot have an intellectual debate about.
I think we should ask him to give an example rather than throwing.
Let me give you my personal example. On November 17th, 2011, I was getting the Late Lantos Award in the Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. This is one of the most recent examples. The Rwandan government trained people. The people wrote letters to the Lantos Foundation people. And they even planned to come and demonstrate at their office. When they came to demonstrate to their office, these people called me and said, these people they want to come and demonstrate. How do we deal with such a case? I told them, okay, this is a very good idea. Let these people speak, give them an opportunity, a chance to talk to you so that you can listen to them. They brought the first people, about 12, 15 people on the queue, on the line. They came into the office one by one, coming in from one entrance, going out through another one. The first one came in, now repeated what they had told him or her to say. The second came in, and then the Lantos people were just taking notes. The second person came in. The same thing, the Lantos people taking notes. Catherine, Lantos, and even Denise and many other people working with the foundation. When the third person came in, they stopped taking notes and said, okay, go ahead. The fourth came in. The 10th person came in, and the 15th person came in. I did not know about this. Otherwise, I would have brought to you a press release written by the foundation, the Lantos Foundation, which is still on their website. They said, I quote, that these people have been trained to tell and repeat the same things. Since they have been repeating the same things from A to Z, then it looks like a lie. This is a pure example
Just a
of what
quick intervention. Thank you very much. The quick intervention that I have, is it just quick before I forget?
No.
Because I think that's a personal experience.
I am called Inyas and I live in Utrecht, in Rwanda. Initially, I have some few questions to be addressed to Olivier, but if I may just briefly talk on this issue of Gacaca.
Sure.
I think there is a confusion. And this confusion is the root cause of the misunderstanding. For foreigners who don't know Rwanda and who have not eyesighted what happened in Rwanda. There was one person, Charles?
Yeah, Charles.
Yeah. Charles said, and also the moderator said, there is a problem. Some people say the Cacaca Courts are only, or they are only an instrument of the government, whereby one group of people is judging another group, while there will be a possibility of creating reconciliation by allowing the two parts to talk towards the reconciliation. That's, I think I'm clear on that. That's how I understood. The problem is this. If we may come back to the understanding of genocide. Genocide, by definition, comes from genos and side. It means killing people of a specific characteristic. So there is a way of identifying these people, and then for it to be called a genocide, it's a process. It can't be accidental. Genocide goes through a process. You start by demonizing that group and educating the population and bringing together instruments for that purpose, and then up to the point where the implementation comes and everybody is ready, psychologically and materially, to do it. So I wonder here whether, if I may ask Charles, whether he knows some of his neighbors who are Tutsi or Hutu, depending on his ethnic group, who killed his family members during the 1994 genocide. Because if this comes in, then it will be what I hear through the statements here, like a double genocide. Then it will be true. If I may come to Mr. Paul, statement, when you say the Rwandan genocide, what does it mean? I didn't get it. Does it mean that it's a double genocide, or it means something else? So in brief, if I may conclude on this, it's like people want something that can't exist or which is not reasonable, because it's not communities or citizens or the population, parts of the population, killing each other. This did not happen. So I conclude on this.
You made your point. I think there are people dying to say something to you.
Okay, yeah. May I go to
Olivier.
Olivier? Mr. Olivier made a good presentation. I like intellectual looking like presentations. They are easily debatable. He said, no, but. He said something about the similarities of the leadership in Rwanda since 1962 up to, sorry?
The three presidents.
Yeah, the three presidents. I'm avoiding to say presidents because in a country there is a leadership. And that's why I even feel bad why you mentioned the name of Kagame here. He is the president of the country, but there is a leadership in Rwanda. So I don't really understand why his name can be repeated. So do you, after drawing the similarity, is there or are there any differences? I mean positive. Are there any positive differences? Would you draw positive differences between the three leaderships? Okay. The second point, you mentioned
Give
something.
you a lot of minutes.
Yeah. Thank you. The second point, you wrote a book on memory. I'd be happy to read it. I haven't read it yet. And you mentioned two memory dimensions. There is cultural and psychological dimension of memory. And this dimension, how would you think they can be applied in Rwanda? Or how do you how do you take these two dimensions to reflect then to the Rwandan reality? Do you think, for instance, the government of Rwanda or should, for instance, help people go through the memory psychologically, individually, or do you think something else?
Thank you.
Okay, the last question. If you were elected, it's the very last one.
Okay.
If you were elected as the president of Rwanda, what would you do to build a better Rwanda? If you give five pillars, 5 dimensions, to build a better Rwanda.
Okay. First Charles and then Olivier.
No, I think perhaps I have not to enter deeply in the discussion about that. I thank you very much to have been able to brought us together because it's the first time I meet such discussion from when I am in Europe. So I think you'd better get another opportunity to organize a seminar for 2 or 3 days, but not for 3 hours. Anyway, what I'd like to say is not a question of double genocide. It's a fact. We are in the front of a fact. More than 3 million Rwandans have been killed. They are Hutu, they are Tutsis. This is not a notion of double genocide. And we say, impunity must stop. Whatever the killer is, must be Hutu, must be Tutsi, he must be in the front of justice. But which kind of justice? Not the justice they say, okay, you are the side, you must, like Kagame said about Ingabire. He said, it's not normal that the president say that somebody is guilty before the tribunal says he's guilty. And he said it in Kampala, he said it in the BBC. This kind of justice cannot encourage people to come and discuss and be in the justice in Rwanda. In any way, what I would like to say, there is a kind of terrorism when somebody is saying his opinion, I think that, he can't be wrong. But don't just say, oh, it's double genocide, you are a negationist. Now, I hope this law will change. Then you cannot speak because you are starting to be in this and this. No, I don't agree. And if we get opportunity to get more days to discuss, I bring you the documents. I've made the research myself on that. Thank you.
But the question I asked you was, tell me whether you know a neighbor who is Tutsi or Hutu who killed your family members during the genocide.
I know them monitoring 10 people who killed.
During genocide?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. That's, you should make them.
I bring you the proof.
Can you state your name, please?
Yeah, my name is Jean-Baptiste. I agree with Ellen when she said that all crime must be brought to justice. I agree with her.
Did I say that?
Yeah, during your speech you said something like that. Yeah, I would like just to ask a question to Paul and Alphonse, the opinion of Olivier. The President Kagame says, people we had to shoot down the king, we did it. What do you think about?
First I have to give
He said it in Kinyarwanda, abatwagombaga kurasa twarabarashe. Yeah?
Yes.
No, other people we had to bring back from the Congo, we did it, we brought them.
But I
the ones
choose
we had to shoot precisely,
and
killed them.
and we did it. How do you see, like man of law, like a politician, and like a journalist?
I will start with Olivier because he has also got to answer some questions.
Allow me to stand up because when I stand up, I'm more comfortable. No, the ideas flows. But the first thing perhaps that really astonishes me here, before I come to your question, is if we could have this type of platform where people could discuss without fear of anything, that would be great. Quickly to your question. Question number one. Positive similarities among the three presidents. Yeah, presidents, the title we give to those who lead us. Kayibanda, Habyarimana, and Kagame. I see one major, let's say two major similarities. One.
I say differences. You mentioned similarities before.
Positive differences.
I want differences, yeah.
One. Of course, the similarities or differences stem from similarities. They all have development as a center. Kayibanda in his own way, Habyarimana in his own way, and Kagame in his own way.
That's not differences.
Of course, it's one thing they see differently.
Could you highlight it?
Under Habyarimana, Rwanda was called the Swiss d'Afrique, which meant something else than Singapore d'Afrique. These are the two concepts of development that are all good, but that are completely different. We see a city which is called Kigali. The great thing is to see, of course, people are getting jobs, people are having a nice city, economy is growing. But under Habyarimana, I was small at the time, but I think I remember things started in the countryside. I remember my father telling me that we had a telephone line in Bimba before they had in Russia, which is something that when I remember it now, I say, yeah. So I don't have many of them. I have more dissimilarities, but negative differences, but I don't go into that. Allow me to jump to the second question, which was the cultural dimension and psychological dimension of memory and how they threat to run. Let me take just one very simple cultural aspect of our memory, and I think part of our sickness as Rwandans come from there. How do we introduce our short tales in Rwanda? And the entire story. For me, this is unacceptable. When I translate to my daughters, they tell me, where do you come from which culture? Because they can't understand how people could call themselves cows and others rats. Take another one. The most popular child poem, Ichivugo, that everybody I think here knows, that I learned in high school, in primary school, was just try to put it into English. And Dutch people here will run away immediately.